Um, Today's sutta, the Kevatta Sutta, is following, really following everything that we've learned this year and focusing specifically on the intent of the Buddha's Dhamma to unite a mind and the body. Somebody asked me this week, an online student, so how do you describe an awakened self? And it gets a little tricky. But it's simply an observant, peaceful mind that is united with, but not clinging to, a body. There's no self-reference there. And a lot of these suttas that we've been going through lately speak to that. And an underlying theme of the Buddha's Dhamma, and it relates to the talks on becoming and those 3 suttas on becoming and what we go over on retreat, of because of a fabricated view rooted in ignorance of 4 noble truths, we are constantly fabricating a self. We're becoming, in the Buddha's words, becoming something other than self. And anytime we try to establish ourselves in a speculative or suppositional realm, that's exactly what we're doing. And so much of, let me put it this way, it's very easy to slip into this idea. We talked a little bit earlier about it, that I need to add something to myself because something's lacking in me, or I need to learn something to fix something that's broken within me. And it all comes from this feeling of dukkha, when dukkha is described as an unsatisfactory experience. And so I think we could all say that at least part of what drew us to seeking understanding in this way was we felt something was lacking. We're lacking in understanding, or we're lacking in complete satisfaction with our life. And so it's that feeling of dukkha, the first noble truth, that drives us to fabricate self, not thinking, the intention is to satisfy that self, but the fabrication itself is rooted in ignorance. And so there's this underlying motivation, not just within modern Buddhism, but it's really the problem in the world, of this need to constantly be creating a self that can be satisfied, but we know that it can't be. Why? Because of impermanence. And I'm going to teach introduce one more sutta before we get into the Truth of Happiness course in 2 weeks, that speaks a little bit more directly to that idea of why we do that and the troubles that follow. But this speaks directly to a very common theme in modern Buddhism, but also during the Buddhist time. We wouldn't have been talking about it. For many, many years, a lot of the things that I was reading and a lot of what people were teaching me, and some world-renowned teachers saying the same thing, that a sign of awakening is when you start having psychic powers or supernatural powers. You can read people's minds. You can travel the cosmos in and out of your body. You can multiply your body many, many times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And those are taught as signs of awakening. Of course, I had a hard time finding a teacher that could actually do that, even though they were telling me that they were doing it. And it was all very confusing. Of course, I put it on myself, the fact that I couldn't read my teacher's mind, that there was something wrong with me, going right back to that beginning of a fabricated state, isn't it? So that view of achieving a speculative supernatural state arises out of a fabricated view. And it's something that the Buddha cautioned against in many different ways over and over again. We've talked a lot about establishing yourself in non-physical realms. Any ideological view that you aspire to is an ideological realm, even if it's practical. I don't know why I've been using, excuse me, Frank, I've been using the idea that I'm the world's greatest baker. And so I have to be, and I'm compelled to always do that. And I need to be reassured by everyone that comes into my bakery shop that I'm the world's greatest baker. This tension that I created in my mind is because I decided that that's what I'm going to be, rather than just being the world's greatest baker without any self-reference. Does everybody get that? It's a little bit of a silly metaphor, but that's kind of the point. I'm going to start, I'm going to skip over most of the introduction. Let's start right near the end. Siddhartha Gautama, rightly self-awakened, understood the cruelty and irresponsibility of misleading others through speculative and suppositional dharmas, lacking heartwood and clear focus. What that refers to is the Buddha understood during his time there were a lot of teachers claiming so-called magical powers as a way of gaining followers, and they would display these things. I learned in my mid-teens, I had a thing about magicians, and I learned very quickly in a little book how to do a cold reading on people. In a few minutes, I realized that I could make it seem like I'm reading your mind and I know things about you that nobody should know. It's a very simple magician's trick, but that's all that it is. And there's been some great magicians in the world that claim that their magical powers are rooted in something spiritual. The Buddha realized that those are all just tricks and speculation, and so he cautioned against it. As seen in this sutta, speculation and supposition can only provide distraction and continued ignorance of Four Noble Truths. And so all of you know that the Buddha teaches a Dhamma that is entirely practical, has nothing to do about magic or special powers. It has to do with creating an observant, peaceful mind, united to but not clinging to a body, present as its life unfolds without any self-reference. In this sutta, we mentioned the translated word that is used for these powers are miraculous or miracle. The word miracle here is not to infer something unexplained arising from a fabricated and speculated realm. As shown below, miracle refers to the unique and extraordinary nature of a true and effective Dhamma. This is the Kevatta Sutta. On one occasion, the Buddha was in Nalanda, staying at Pavarika's mango forest. Kevatta, a householder, had a question for the Buddha. He approached the Buddha, bowed, and sat to one side. Great teacher, Nalanda is both a prosperous, by the way, Nalanda is today, there's a university there, which is recognized as one of the foremost Buddhist universities in the world. But it's based on a lot of the things that the Buddha taught we shouldn't be chasing after. That's something else. Great teacher, Nalanda is both prosperous and well populated. Many here have faith in the Buddha. It would be of benefit if you would direct a monk to show a miracle of psychic power. This show of superior human power would deepen the faith of the people of Nalanda that they have in you. The Buddha replied, Kevatta, a display of psychic powers is not a Dharma teaching, and I do not direct my disciples in this manner. Kevatta asked again, and then a third time, I will not argue with you, but I will tell you that Nalanda is prosperous and well populated. Many here have faith in the Buddha. It would be of benefit if you would direct a monk to show a miracle of psychic power. This show of superior human power would deepen the faith that the people of Nalanda have in you. And a third time, the Buddha told Kevatta, a display of psychic powers is not a Dhamma teaching, and I do not direct my disciples in this manner. Again, it's surprising to me how often that was presented in many modern Buddhist texts continue to say that as a sign of awakening, as you'll have these powers. And the Buddha, again, talked directly against even seeking that as a distraction. Kevatta, there are these three qualities deemed miraculous that I have encountered. Notice the word deemed miraculous. People consider these as miraculous. And this part is called the drawback of seeking psychic powers. I have encountered those who believe in the miracle of psychic powers, such as appearing in many places at once, walking through solid objects, walking on water, diving into the earth, flying cross-legged through the air, I particularly like that one, and vanishing at will. Then someone who believes these as miracles tells another while declaring these qualities as awesome and astonishing power. Then this one would tell of a charm called a Gandhari charm. Gandhari is still a charm that's very popular to use in many modern Mahayana Buddhists, and also it's a Hindu symbol, called a Gandhari charm that provided the power for these miracles. What do you think? Is this what they would consider as miraculous? Kevatta says, yes, that is just what they would say. The Buddha says, knowing the drawback, the distraction of believing in these displays and calling them miracles, well, I am ashamed. I'm repulsed and disgusted with a display of psychic powers. Can't get more direct than that, can you? And it's only because it continues to distract people. He understands the the great draw of showing off these things, but he also understands that they're just distractions, and it causes people to want to create themselves in these types of realms and these types of ideas.
Some of them are pretty useless.
Most of them
cross-legged through the air.
Yeah, and that's my favorite one. But also, I think about this one: walking through walls. All you have to do is go around. You don't have to develop and focus on developing the psychic power of walking through walls, because there's always a doorway, unless you're in prison. But, you know. And I mean, they're all stuck in this idea of making something special out of myself, and that's really the point of this. There's nothing special. Again, following in the Kevatta Sutta and the discussion of the 6 properties that make up a human being, that's taught to show the completely impersonal nature. So even if there is a form that can fly through walls, you're still just these 6 properties that happens to fly around. The next section is called the drawback of seeking telepathic powers. Furthermore, I have encountered those who believe in the miracle of telepathy, such as reading others' thoughts, saying this is what you are thinking here and this is what you are thinking there. Then someone who believes these as miracles tells another while declaring these qualities as awesome and astonishing power. Then this one would tell of a charm called a Manika charm that provided the power for these miracles. What do you think? Is this what they would consider as miraculous? And look at the reference to the charms. And now the charm is something that you worship and something you must gain or acquire and put in your vault or bury in the ground in the back of your cave. Yes, that is just what they would say. Well, knowing the drawback, the distraction of believing in these displays as miraculous, I am horrified, humiliated, and disgusted with a display of telepathy. And now we get to the good part, called the miracle of Dhamma instructions. Then the Buddha says, then there is this third quality, the miracle of Dhamma instruction. Here, a wise one gives instructions on directing thinking in one way and not another, what to hold in mind and what to abandon. They give instruction on what to be mindful and what to abandon. And that the framework is the Eightfold Path for that. They give instruction on what to let go of and what to enter and remain in. That's how the Buddha describes right mindfulness. Enter and remain in each factor of the Eightfold Path. This Kevatta is known as the miracle of Dhamma instruction. A wise one, a worthy and rightly self-awakened one, teaches the Dhamma that is admirable in the beginning, admirable in the middle, and admirable in the end. That's something that's a line that the Buddha uses often to refer to a true and authentic Dhamma. He teaches a life well integrated with this Dhamma in its particulars and in its essence that is entirely perfect and pure. I mean, this is my comment here. The reference above characterizes the theme of this sutta and an underlying theme of the Buddha's Dhamma. Admirable in the beginning, admirable in the middle, and admirable in the end is in reference to the uniqueness, unified, complete, and individually accessible Buddha's Dhamma that is corrupted when any part of the Dhamma is adapted. In other words, the Buddha teaches a simple and direct Dhamma that is complete, and any time you adapt, accommodate, diminish, or dismiss any part of that, the Dhamma loses its effectiveness. It needs to be complete, and if you make it embellished in any way, you're losing that completeness too. It's admirable in the beginning, the middle, and the end. It's complete. Now, suppose an ordinary, run-of-the-mill person, upon hearing the Dhamma, gains conviction in the Dhamma. They see their present life as confining and dusty. They see the life well integrated with the Dhamma as free and clear. They realize the difficulties of remaining entangled with the world. They see the life well integrated with the Eightfold Path as completely pure and perfect. They ask themselves, what if I shaved my head and put on the robes and go forth in the Dhamma? Having gone forth, they live restrained, knowing the danger in even the slightest faults. Consummate in virtue, they are always guarding the senses. Established in refined mindfulness, they are alert and content. They've just simply developed the Eightfold Path as intended. Abandoning the 5 hindrances is this next section. consummate in virtue, restrained at the senses, mindful, alert, and content, they seek out the root of a tree or an empty hut. Excuse me. So this last paragraph is a synopsis of everything we've put an emphasis on this year, and particularly in the last 6 months, beginning with the wisdom of restraint at the 6th sense base, the cease I making there, the importance of understanding that meditation is for concentration alone, for deepening jhana, and the application of proper mindfulness in relation to our own behavior, to use right speech, right action, right livelihood as a basis for establishing virtuous behavior in a practical and essential way if we're going to be Dhamma practitioners. I'll say that last line again. They seek out the root of a tree or an empty hut, and the Buddha would always say, and they do jhana. Returning from alms, meaning we've gone and got our daily meal, they then sit with legs crossed, bringing mindfulness of the breath to the fore, and begin jhana. They begin meditation based on the beginning of the Satipatthana Sutta. Abandoning craving with regard to the world, they dwell in mindfulness devoid of craving. Craving fades from their mind. Abandoning ill will and anger, they dwell in mindfulness devoid of ill will and anger. Sympathetic to the welfare of all beings, ill will and anger fade from their mind. You see where he's addressing the 5 hindrances. And it's simply by being mindful of deepening concentration and being mindful of that's not present in this moment that it fades from our mind, rather than feeding it. And one of the ways that we could feed it is by thinking we need charms or we need to establish ourselves in speculative realms through rituals and practices that aren't in accordance with the Eightfold Path. We're merely emphasizing what we're trying to abandon, rather than simply recognize it and abandon it through the Eightfold Path. That's where the power of the Eightfold Path lies. It allows us to recognize what is rooted in ignorance as fabrication and simply let it go. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. And is it clear that that's what the Buddha is referring to here in this sutta? This is the process that we undertake to awaken, to recognize what is blocking what we have attached ourselves to through a fabricated view of reality rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths that blocks us from seeing reality. Another way of saying it that I often say is it's a strategy. These are all strategies that we develop, an aspect of conditioned mind, in order to ignore ignorance. We have to do it, or our ignorance is right in our face. And we don't want to face that. Again, that's why the Buddha gave us an Eightfold Path.
So because they don't want to face it, it'd be really good if you could float. That'd be really good.
Wouldn't it? And look how superior I am. And that's all I have to do. And we can, and I, now that I say that, I don't want to get too off track. I had a teacher of one time, not even something really religious. It had to do with Hawaiian stuff she had it all messed up. Anyway, she was a very good NLP practitioner, meaning she knew how to say things to manipulate what you were thinking. And she was also, I found out later, a hypnotist. And I went on quite a few trips in Hawaii with her. And she had me believing that I was flying around the cosmos and visiting, it sounds silly now, but visiting different planets, et cetera, et cetera. And I really believed it. And I was someone that did it. And because I was someone that did it, I became one of her senior students that unfortunately started teaching other people how to do this foolishness. Really, and that's what it was. But at the time, it seemed very real. I mean, maybe that's why I understand the drawback so well. Because I reconfirmed what she was trying to teach, and I wanted to be a good student, so I brought it on myself. And once I told her, that continued her own belief in what she thought she was doing. Do you see that? And really what we were just a bunch of confused human beings getting more and more confused by our need to establish ourselves in some special way. And the whole time I was flying around the cosmos, I was sitting under a banyan tree listening to this. There was no reality in it except in my own mind, is the point that I'm making.
That happened to involve psychedelic drugs.
Not then, but
What
but much earlier.
What were you smoking?
But much, yeah, we didn't smoke or take anything at that time. And that's another,
John,
yes.
this all this all starts with how you think about yourself, though. First.
All of it. I would have never been in that position if I didn't think there was something lacking in me or something wrong with me. I needed to be someone who could fly around the cosmos at will or whatever.
Everything to avoid the hindrance. Facing the hindrances.
Anything that I could do to ignore the fact that I was suffering from ignorance. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
That's it, really. Just you have to hold in mind that really what you're just reading right now is, to me, it should be to put to myself first, and not out in phenomena with other people and things like that. I should.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's not all the confused folks out there. That's an aspect of dukkha. That's the first noble truth. Dukkha occurs. What I need to know is, why has it occurred in me? How can I avoid not sticking that second arrow in? And that's really all that we have control over. Excuse me. But it's all that we should be putting our efforts in, past getting alms. The Buddha said we need 4 things: food, shelter, clothing, and medicine. So we all need to put some effort into doing that as human beings. But beyond that, the most important thing is to awaken, isn't it? And awaken before the cow gets us, which could be today. And I hope I get through this now, because it all comes down to, what am I thinking right now? What am I holding in mind? If I'm holding in mind a speculated, fabricated view of myself, I can only continue ignorance. Again, that series on becoming, and most of the Dhamma talks that I give, what am I holding in mind right now? And if in this moment I can hold in mind the purity of what is actually occurring, there's no stress. I am then simply experiencing an observant, peaceful mind, united but not clinging to a body. Isn't that remarkable? Yeah. What more could we really want? There's the point I'm making is, that's beyond any kind of the second noble truth. That's beyond any type of craving, isn't it? Because there's nothing left to satisfy. There's nothing left to be disappointed. It's simply an observant, peaceful mind united with its body. And so a self-referential ego personality will say, okay, but what next? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to acquire? What are you going to become? Well, I'm going to become awakened. And what I hold in mind is what's important, what's most important. Referring back to the hindrances. Abandoning laziness, lethargy, and indifference, they dwell in mindfulness devoid of laziness, lethargy, and indifference. The next hindrance. Laziness, lethargy, and indifference fade from their mind. It's not, again, it's an important, it's not an issue. This isn't something that we need to analyze, or, some people would say, embrace these kind of things. We simply recognize that they're fabrications and abandon them. We don't hold them in mind. And if we try to analyze, well, why am I lazy? Where does it come from? Why am I so lethargic? Why am I so fearful? Why am I filled with ill will? Let's find out where that came from. That's just reinforcing it in our mind, isn't it? What the brilliance of the Buddha is saying, if it's occurring in your mind, you're in control of it. Let go of it. And I should just put a qualification. If people that have had severe trauma, and maybe I shouldn't even say severe trauma, people that have been traumatized, and that, by the way, that's most of us living this life that we're living, most need to go through a process of recognizing that in some way. And oftentimes a mindful therapist is helpful in getting us going in that direction. But ultimately, we need to recognize we're not trying to heal something because there's nothing broken, because there's nothing there. There's just 6 properties. the four elements of space property and the consciousness property. And it's that consciousness property that's interpreting the experience of the other five properties. So if that consciousness is rooted in reality and understanding of Four Noble Truths, there's nothing to heal.
John, I thought it was really interesting from the Thursday. One of the verses was talking about how you see when you've been abused or hurt, or
Yeah.
and I thought that was very interesting how, like, when it's to that extreme, that the Buddha's still putting it on you to recognize that that's fabricated.
Yeah.
And
It's a second arrow. If you
But-
hold on to it.
Yeah.
but he really used strong terms where it wasn't just not satisfactory, but possibly physical or mental abuse. And it was just interesting that
Yeah.
he still puts it on you to recognize that.
Yeah, and that's from the Yamakavaga, if I remember the word correctly, Yamakavaga Sutta. The mind governs all. And so in that particular line, he's saying no matter what has occurred to me, no matter what type of abuse you've suffered, it's up to you to deal with it. And how what you're holding in mind is going to determine your experience of it. So think about, excuse me, any deep trauma that's happened to us. I mean, none of us get through life without some kind of pain, and sometimes it's often severe, and sometimes and often it's directed directly at us. So it's hard not to take it personal. But it's something that has happened. The only way the effect can be, the only way that it can be affecting me now, is by me continuing to. This is an aspect of wrong mindfulness, to be holding it in mind. Mindfulness means to recollect or to hold in mind. So if I'm holding in mind continually, whether it's subconsciously or not, a past abuse, it's affecting me now. And it's only now that I can deal with it. And I can deal with it by recognizing this is not me, this is not mine, this is not what I am. It's completely, it depersonalizes something that we have been holding on to as personal for most of our lives. Lorna.
So, following up from what I said on Thursday about my dyslexia, when I feel that I'm not adequate because I can't do something, whatever, I'm kind of wanting whoever I'm talking to or whoever I'm with, I'm kind of wanting them to understand this problem.
Mm-hmm.
So in me wanting them to understand where I'm coming from and the problems I've had, etc., am I really wanting just to reinforce the whole thing, you know, and just having something from phenomena to reinforce my thinking about myself to carry, so I can then carry it on?
Yeah, I wouldn't make an absolute declarative statement and say that's what's occurring all the time. There's some times where it would be just practical to say, you know, I'm dyslexic and I can't read that quickly. But, and it goes back to intention. Often we use these types of disabilities or things that we think are lacking in ourselves to explain away poor behavior or poor performance. There's something wrong with me. And it's a way of entangling others into our own world. So there's a practical way of dealing with it, and there's a way that simply furthers eye making. But what's most important is to recognize no matter what the disability might be, and I'm using disability in a very broad sense here, no matter what we think is wrong with us, there's nothing personal about it. It's simply what's occurring. So you're not denying the fact that you're dyslexic, and it's not just reading. There's a lot more that goes with it. But it's simply what's part of those 6 properties, and those are completely impersonal. It's not, when you see it that way, when you're earth, fire, water, liquid, earth, fire, wind, water, space, and consciousness, and that's it.
That's it.
And then there's a component of it that is dyslexic. It's still part of these 6 properties. It's not, there's nothing personal. Is that clear? Because it really what I'm hoping to get to, and I think you're getting it, is the complete impersonal nature of any of this. Yet we think because we take it personal, we want to constantly become something other than self, such as a needy person with dyslexia rather than just dyslexic. Clear? Okay. Getting back to the 5 hindrances. Abandoning restlessness and anxiety, they dwell undisturbed. Restlessness and anxiety fade from the mind. It's no longer an issue. Abandoning doubt and uncertainty, they dwell in mindfulness devoid of doubt and uncertainty and free of any confusion with regard to skillful mental qualities. There's a huge school of Zen Buddhism. In fact, right now I can think of listening to one of the great Zen teachers talking about developing great doubt and cultivate great doubt as almost a whole Dhamma. I know you've heard of it. That's almost a whole Dharma practice. In fact, it relates to koan practice. I don't want to get too deep into that. But the idea is that you so confuse your mind with doubt and uncertainty that your mind will kind of explode into awakening. I mean, really, that's how it's presented. And I did that for a long, long time, trying to explode my mind. And it just filled me with ever more doubt and uncertainty because that's what I was focusing on. That was what I was holding in mind. And again, I'm not putting down, I know it just sounds like I'm denigrating it. I really don't mean it to denigrate that type of practice. But what's surprising is 2,600 years ago, the Buddha recognized it's just foolish. It's just more becoming other than self. Creating this environment of spiritual study of doubt and uncertainty. Uncertainty is just another aspect of impermanence, isn't it? Understanding impermanence, and there's nothing uncertain because everything just occurs. Uncertainty and free of any confusion with regard to skillful mental qualities. Doubt and uncertainty fade from their mind. Suppose a person takes a loan and invests it in their business, and the business succeeds. They pay off the debt with money left over for maintaining their family. They would think, before I had debt and now I have repaid my debt, they would be happy and satisfied. Now suppose, this is relating to each of the hindrances. Now suppose a person falls ill. They do not enjoy food and are weak. Eventually they recover their appetite and strength. They would think, before I was ill with no appetite or strength, now I am well, happy, and satisfied. It's just the Buddha's using these metaphors to describe your mind before awakening and when you know you are awakened, letting go of these hindrances. Now suppose a person is in prison. Time passes and they are released from bondage. They would think, before I was bound in prison and now I am released, safe and sound. They would be happy and satisfied. Now suppose a person is a slave, subject to others and not themselves. Eventually they are released from slavery. They would think, before I was a slave and now I am free, subject to no other. They would be happy and satisfied. Now suppose a person was traveling with money and goods in a desolate country, worried of their surroundings. Eventually they emerge from the desolate country and are relieved. They would think, before I was in a desolate country, worried, fearful. Now I have emerged from that place with no loss of money or goods, and I am relieved, happy, and satisfied. My commentary here. The Buddha is using these stories to describe a mind rooted in fabrications as being debt-ridden, diseased, enslaved, imprisoned, and dangerous. The Buddha continues, in this same manner, when these 5 hindrances are not abandoned, they are seen as a debt, as a sickness, as a prison, slavery, a dangerous path. But when these 5 hindrances are recognized and abandoned, this Dhamma practitioner knows they are debt-free, healthy, unbound, free, and on a safe path. They are joyful and rapturous. Enraptured, their body is calm. The Buddha's description of an awakened human being. Their body calm, they are sensitive to pleasure, sensitive to feeling. They develop concentration. My comment here. A well-concentrated mind is mindfully sensitive to what is present while remaining free of grasping, aversion, or agitating reaction. This is a mind united with its body, free of clinging to speculative and distracting mind states. Liberated from fabricated views arising from ignorance is a direct and knowable experience developed only through a reality-based Dhamma practice. Enraptured here refers to joyful concentration and mindfulness of being released or unbound from wrong views rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. It just means that we know it. We know we're completing the task. And how do we know it? Because we're experiencing it within our mind and body. We're more at peace. We're less entangled in the world, even though we are meaningfully present in the world. I like this backwards. Development of jhana. Quite secluded from sensuality and other unskillful mental qualities. They enter and remain in the first jhana. We just went through this, but I'm just going to go over it briefly. This first jhana is experienced as rapture born of that very seclusion. It is accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. The joy of seclusion permeates their entire mind and body. It is as if one poured bath powder into a brass basin, kneading the powder into the water, sprinkling more and more powder, forming a ball of bath powder, saturated and moisture-laden. It would nevertheless not lose a drop of its own substance. This is how a follower of the Noble Eightfold Path permeates their entire mind and body from the joy born of seclusion. This is called the miracle of instruction. Getting right down to the basics of meditation, isn't it? The miracle of instruction. If you want the miracle, here it is. Excuse me. Furthermore, as the distilling of directed thought and evaluation, they enter and remain in the second jhana. This second jhana is experienced as rapture and pleasure born of concentration. Free of directed thought and evaluation, the joy of concentration permeates their entire mind and body. And we've all experienced that, haven't we? At least these first two levels, and I would say all four. That first, we take pleasure in that simple act of sitting quietly and becoming mindful of our breath. But we're directing our thoughts towards the meditation practice. And as our concentration deepens, we recognize it, and it's simply an ever deepening level of a pleasant abiding in that deepening concentration. And I've never found anywhere in the Buddhist teaching where he puts a time frame as a qualifying factor for any of this. Never. The Buddha never taught that we should meditate for X amount of hours. And he never taught that we should have experienced the first or the second or the third or the fourth jhana for X amount of time. In fact, as he teaches it, it's simply ever deepening levels of meditation that we encounter doing right meditation. And even remember the last sutta, I can't remember, where he's using Sariputta as the example. I can't think of the name. That even after that fourth level of jhana, there's still deepening levels of concentration, but it's all part of that pleasant abiding, meaning you're simply established in concentration.
Sometimes when I'm reading the suttas, it seems to me that he's referring to meditating right through the night. When the last sutta we did about unfortunate fellow got hit by a cow.
Yeah.
Like there, and it's when at the third watch of the night, he said, "Oh, maybe I should be teaching this fellow some dharma."
Yeah.
And I've seen that kind of reference in other suttas too, where it looks like these guys were just going right through the night.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful to do.
Mm-hmm.
The Buddha never said to do it, though. He never.
Right.
And I mean, my typical meditation practice is 30 minutes twice a day, but occasionally, maybe once or twice a month, I decide to spend an afternoon meditating, and it's wonderful. But I don't teach it. In fact, I don't even talk about it too much because I don't want to set that up as something that you think you have to do, because 30 minutes twice a day is a realistic meditation practice that anybody can establish. And it also happens to be enough to develop right meditation. But yeah, there's many references. In most of the suttas that talk about the Buddha's awakening experience, it talks about him meditating for 2 weeks, and it's implied that it's 2 weeks straight. Of course, I don't see it that way. And even those stories that say that he's meditating through the night doesn't necessarily mean that he never came out of his meditation. In other words, today I might decide that it's a good day to sit for 4 hours, but that will typically mean I sit for an hour and I might get up and go to the bathroom, pet the dog. It's just it's basic. It's the meditation process itself is basically what I'm doing for a period of time, but it's not the only thing I'm doing.
It also seems like some of the suttas, when they do make references like that, Ananda isn't there observing it. It seems to be well after, and maybe a embellishment of the story.
Yeah,
The teaching is the foundation, but the details seem to oftentimes have more something different than what Ananda often would observe, or
yeah.
so. That's what I've seen sometimes when I've read it.
No, it's a good point, David. Again, I've never read anywhere where the Buddha teaches that, after you've been practicing Dhamma for 2 years, then you got to sit through the night or anything. Never put a time frame on any of it. And now we're talking a little bit about. I'll get back to the sutta. If you feel like meditating for longer periods of time, go ahead. In fact, I would say, take an afternoon and just meditate off and on as long as you want and see how it feels to you. See what you get out of it. But I never say this is what you have to do as Dhamma practice. And the reason why I don't is I've never found any teaching that the Buddha said you had to do it.
And even in the rules for the monks, I don't believe there is any.
Never.
Sign of that.
Never. And I've told you I've gone on 7 and 10 day sessions where you're meditating for 14, 16 hours a day. And it's just awful. It just is. And I've never found anybody, that's not true. 98% of the people that I talk to after, because these are all silent retreats, they basically say the same thing, even though they're not admitting it. They're just glad it's over. And I was too. I've talked to monks that talk about this excruciating practice that they have. And why do it? Again, it's not founded in anything, except it's the speculative idea that a self-referential ego personality will always grasp on that more is better. If I'm a meditator for 2 hours, I'm going to be a better meditator at 4 hours.
Isn't that exactly what this sutta was about?
It is.
It's creating something more.
Yes.
I will be a better, longer meditator, but is it addressing the insight of the 3 marks?
Yeah, it's not.
If it's not, then you're just a long, marathon meditator.
Yep.
But it's not leading to your understanding of ignorance anymore.
Yes, and that's another reason why the Buddha wouldn't teach that, because it's not just meditation. You can't meditate yourself awaken, despite what people claim. It's an 8-fold path. And even the idea, I touched on, I think 2 Thursdays ago, the idea of silent retreats. I talk about it more during our retreats. But that's one of the reasons why I don't practice silent retreats or lead silent retreats, even though that's the predominant type of retreat. You talk about retreats, almost all of them are silent because it's the denial of your senses. And if you're denying your senses, you can't practice restraint at your senses, can you? That's what we need to be mindful of. And so again, we're getting into, if a little bit is good, a lot's better. That's just fabrication, isn't it? So the most important thing, just to put a little cap on this, the Buddha taught right meditation. He taught that meditation needs to be engaged in wholeheartedly, but he taught that it's there to support right mindfulness and integrating an entire 8-fold path. There's no length of time to qualify that. And I think everybody here, except maybe Ram too, you all started with short periods of meditation, probably 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, correct?
Mhm.
Because you listen to me. That's the right way to begin. Pardon?
When I really started my daily practice, I did start at 5 minutes.
Yeah, and that's something you can do rather than being told that you have, and most meditation teachers will tell you, you got to start somewhere like around 45 minutes or an hour. And so people try it for a week or 2 and they say, well, I can't do this. Most people couldn't do it. I couldn't do it when I first started. Actually, my first meditation was just 5 minutes. But when I came to Buddhist meditation, it was taught, you've got to sit for an hour. I did. I mean, I was at monasteries and temples with big groups, but I was just waiting for the hour to get over. Now, I kind of, most of the time, I wish it would go on a little bit longer, but it's 30 minutes of a pleasant abiding. There's no struggle in it. And none of you have struggled more than you would need to establish a meditation practice. That's all that we need to do. Let me finish this. The second jhana, the joy of concentration permeates the entire body. It's as if a lake with no inflow is filled with spring water welling up from within and from abundant showers. The cool water welling up from within the lake would permeate and fill the entire lake. This is how a follower of the Noble Eightfold Path permeates their entire mind and body from the joy born of concentration. This is called the miracle of instruction. I'm going to skip over the next two levels of jhana just for time's sake and because we've gone over it recently. I'll finish that section on jhana with this. It's as if one were sitting head to toe in a white cloth, their entire body covered. This is how a follower of the Noble Eightfold Path permeates their entire mind and body with pure, bright awareness. We're talking about the fourth jhana now. This is called the miracle of instruction. This next section is called insight, knowledge, and vision. With a mind established in jhana, in concentration, pure, luminous, supple, free of conflict, a Dhamma practitioner can now incline their mind to insight, to knowledge, to vision. With a mind united with the body, this Dhamma practitioner understands the speculation and supposition of seeking supernormal powers, hearing voices, awareness of non-physical beings, knowledge of past lives, knowledge of passing away and reappearing. They also know the value of knowing the ending of greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. Interesting where the Buddha places that after this seeking speculative and suppositional mind states. They also know the value of ending of greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. From profound right view, they know this is stress, this is the origination of stress, this is the cessation of stress, this is the path leading to the cessation of stress. It's the Four Noble Truths. With this knowledge, they are released from clinging to sensuality and released from becoming further ignorant. With this knowledge, they know they are released. They know that birth is ended. They know that a life well integrated with the Eightfold Path has been lived. They know that the task is done and there are no further entanglements with the world. Just as if there was a clear and calm pool of water and a person with good eyesight would see clearly the shells, the gravel, and fish. Due to their good eyesight, they would know that they are seeing shells, gravel, and fish. In the same manner, with their mind established in jhana, pure, supple, luminous, free of conflict, a Dhamma practitioner can now incline their mind to insight. Once we develop the level of concentration, we can now incline our mind towards insight, to knowledge, to vision. With a mind united with the body, this Dhamma practitioner knows the ending of greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. They know that birth is ended. They know that a life well integrated with the Eightfold Path has been lived. They know that the task is done and there is no further entanglements with the world. This is called the miracle of instruction. This is the miracle of Dhamma instruction that I declare, having directly known and realized this for myself. The realms of speculation and supposition. Once Kevatta, there was a certain monk distracted by speculative achievement. He wanted to know where the four great elements cease without remainder. In his mind, he traveled to the different realms, Diva realm, seeking an answer. Everywhere, when the Buddha uses the metaphor of non-physical realms, it's always a metaphor for a mind rooted in ignorance. He asked the Divas of the four great kings. They did not know. He asked the Diva of the 33. They did not know. He asked Sikha, the ruler of the Divas, and he did not know. He asked the Diva of the hours. He did not know. He asked Tulsita Diva, the Tulsita Divas. They did not know. He asked the Santasita Divas. And no, Diva, I can't even say that one. They did not know. He asked the Diva Vasavati. He did not know. He asked the Divas of the Brahma's retinue. You're getting close to the top. They did not know. Finally, he asked the great Brahma himself, friend, where do the four great elements end without remainder? The great Brahma replied, remember, these are all metaphors for what's occurring in your own ignorant mind. The great Brahma replied, I am the great Brahma, the conqueror, the unconquered, the all-seeing, all-powerful. Sounds like the Wizard of Oz, doesn't it? I wonder if they got it from that. The sovereign Lord, the maker, the creator, the chief appointer and ruler, the father of all that have been and shall be. A second and third time, the monk asked the great Brahma for an answer. You know, remember, the Buddha is referring to speculative and suppositional realms here. He's already declared that this is just occurring in your imagination. A second and third time, the monk asked the great Brahma for an answer. The great Brahma took the monk aside and told him, the devas of the great Brahma's retinue believe there is nothing I do not know or have realized for myself. This is why I did not say in their presence that I too did not know where the four elements cease without remainder. Finally got honest. But know this, it is your mistake, your wrongdoing, that you ignored the Buddha's teaching and looked outside of yourself and outside of the Dhamma for your answer. He's using this very powerful metaphor to remind Kevatta of the miracle of the Dhamma. It's not something outside of yourself. Return to the Buddha and his Dhamma. There you will find your answer. Let's skip over some commentary. Then this monk was released from the realm of speculation and supposition. He came to me, the Buddha is referring to himself, bowed and sat to one side. After a time he asked, great teacher, where do the four great elements cease without remainder? I said to him, once there were some seafaring merchants. When land could no longer be seen, they released a short-sighted bird. It searched east, west, north, and south. It searched everywhere it could and finally returned to the ship. In the same way, having searched in every realm you could imagine, you have returned here to me. The question should not be asked, where do the four great elements cease without remainder? The proper question is, where does the earth property, the wind property, the fire property, and the liquid property have no footing? Big difference. Where do they end? Where do they have no footing? Where are they no longer established? Where are long and short, coarse and fine, pleasant and unpleasant? Where is name and form brought to an end? In other words, self-referential views. The answer to this and the miracle of Dhamma instruction is this. Unbound consciousness, luminous, pure. Here the four great elements have no footing. Here, long and short, coarse and fine, pleasant and unpleasant, and form are brought to an end once they have no footing. What is all that, including, just focus on name and form, where does it gain footing? Dependent origination says it's from ignorance to fabrications, to consciousness rooted in those and informed by fabrications, that name and form is established from ignorance. This is the miracle of Dhamma instruction that I declare, having directly known and realized this for myself. That's exactly what the Buddha awakened to, dependent origination. From ignorance of Four Noble Truths, all manner of confusion, deluded thinking, and ongoing stress and suffering arises. Having directly known and realized this for myself, this is what the Buddha said. Kevatta, the householder, was delighted with these words. The end of the sutta. Thank you. What a remarkable sutta. And it's really just a reminder to keep this Dhamma practice pure and simple. Not get outside of it. Not speculate that, and not fall into the speculation rooted in I need it to be more than what it is. And when I again, it was a process for me to finally get this, but I still remember the great relief when I finally understood it's just this. This is all that I have to do is integrate myself with this eightfold path. And there's such freedom and power in that. And I stopped chasing things around the cosmos, and I stopped doing rituals that I knew on one level was just foolish. That I was doing these vows and these chants to appeal to something outside of myself, to hope that I can get fixed or hope that I can get awakened, rather than simply develop this pure and simple path and clean up my mind to think what I wanted to think when I want to think it, when it's appropriate. So let's just go around the room and see if you have any questions or comments on this. Lorna, good to see you.
Thank you. Covered a lot today.
Yes.
It's sort of been all well, what I would say is that over Christmas, I was very conscious that how many arisings are associated with Christmas. I mean, it's just like arriving paradise.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to be mindful of, noticing the arisings and not make them personal, and they're just happening. It's just Christmas, and that's how I've tried to be mindful of Christmas. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask Frank. Frank, you have anything you'd like to say? I think your mic is unmuted. Frank? Maybe you don't have your mic on. Well, glad you're here, Frank. Anthony, good to see you.
Good morning. I got another theme from this when I was listening to it. Is I know that what you said is that the miracles just perpetuate ignorance and create unnecessary mental fabrications, and I get all that, but I thought maybe another part of this could be that the Buddha is trying to show that this is not like a lot of the religions that are out there with burning bushes and parting seas and miracles happening, and that and the interesting thing I thought was that he didn't answer the question of whether he could do those things, so we don't really know the answer, and it didn't matter, because I think that part of this is he just wanted to show that you can have this too, and you don't have to be able to create miracles. You can just be a human being.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. It's such a good point. Thank you. He does address some of these in other teachings, such as when Vacchagotta wanted to know what happens to you after death and this and that. And he just dismissed those, saying that those are just simply unimportant. But in the Simsapa Sutta, the handful of leaves, he's walking through the forest with a bunch of monks, and they ask the Buddha, what is your knowledge? Is your knowledge like all the trees in the forest, like the leaves on the trees in the forest? I didn't ask that. I'm characterizing it. Walking through the forest, they asked the Buddha, what is the extent of your knowledge? And he picks up a handful of leaves, and he says, my knowledge is like all the leaves on the trees of the forest, but I only teach this because that's what you need. And so the implication is that he knows a lot, but it could also mean, I was thinking about this just the other day. I have my own understanding of, just to use an example, I have my own understanding of the political system in our country, but letting you know what I know about politics, or economics or sports, they're all irrelevant to what we're teaching here.
Yeah.
So I might have a lot of other knowledge, and we all have specific knowledge. I can tell you how to put a roof on, it won't leak. So what? I mean, if your roof is leaking, that's important. But as far as the Dhamma is concerned, I have other knowledge, but this is what I talk about because that's what's important.
Yeah, and to the extent he shows that, he's now creating separation. You didn't want to create saying to people you could meditate 4 hours.
Yeah.
Because why set the bar so high?
Yeah, because it is utterly meaningless to developing the Dhamma. All of it is, because it's all establishment. So, and again, the Buddha never held himself out as someone who did something extraordinary, except that he said, I'm the first guy that figured it out, and now I'm teaching you. That's it. It's the only difference he ever taught. That's from the Buddha Sutta. He talks about that too.
Yeah.
Makes that point. And he does that to constantly, he does it out of great compassion and responsibility, because he's letting other people know, if I can do it, you can do it. There's nothing special about me. And then he taught a Dhamma that other people can. We all know now that this is something we can do. For years and years and years, I was a Buddhist practitioner, not knowing anything about what I was doing, and always thinking that I can never achieve this, because that's how it was taught to me. You can't really do this, but do this anyway. You'll never awaken. It takes endless eons. But I did it, but always blaming myself, until I realized that that was all a fabrication too. Thank you, Anthony. Ron, boy, it's nice you stayed today.
Ah, yeah. Nice to be here on the side. Yeah, I appreciate this sort of because it's because of in a way of the simplicity of the Dharma. It's so easy to want to get distracted into more and fancier and better feeling stuff.
Yeah.
God, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And he just keeps coming. This is just the Dharma, and deal with the Dharma and leave the rest alone. There is plenty of things that he would have known. This whole thing with the divas is another one of these things. Yeah, you can think there are no divas and it's a mind state, or you can think there is. But if you do, you just going to get distracted in stuff that you don't need to be worried about.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Whether there's diva realms and Brahma realms and all that, it's completely irrelevant.
Yeah. I know people that work in that kind of realm, and they seem to be very happy with it, and they even accomplish stuff. But it's just one more thing that's just irrelevant to developing the Dharma and becoming awake.
Yeah. Thank you. Hello, good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be here. I guess for me, it comes back to one of my favorite stories is about the second arrow, because anytime you try to, sort out all this other stuff, you're really just putting another arrow in your side that's preventing you from clarity of the simplicity of it all.
Yeah.
So, that whole thought, that whole idea of, thinking what you want to think, thinking, right, just skillfully, it's abandoning all that other stuff, or, if you're thinking, that there's a void in you, or why did this happen to me, or any of those kinds of irrelevant things, you're just not advancing anything. You're just sticking the arrow in your side. So just realizing that it's all up to you. It's all in your hands. What you think, the thoughts you can banish, it's all in your own hands. It's empowering.
It is. Thank you. And over the years, the Dhamma has become much simpler for you. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, you understand how to apply it. That's really how it is. It's not complicated and confusing, but it's because of the views that we're holding that initially make it seem confusing, because it contradicts the way we think.
Or maybe it's an advantage to me that I haven't gone seeking other religions, so to speak, or that what's that song, Seeking My Religion. I seek clarity, and every time you say it's not this, it's like, it's fine with me because I never picked that up in the first place.
Yeah.
And I just don't stick it on me. I get my little Teflon suit on, and it sheds right off and doesn't become part of my baggage, or doesn't enter my tool bag. So I just listen for what it is, and that's what I hold on to.
Yeah. I think I've been teaching about 10 years now. And the ones that have had the greatest difficulty in just developing what the Buddha taught are people that have been practicing Buddhism for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was difficult for me at first. And it's because the way a mind gets conditioned. You create an identity over something, and so it can't be something else.
And we hear it in people who come to our sangha,
Oh,
who
yeah.
have been other places, and the questions that they ask, and they have a hard time letting go of that because that's been their teaching.
Yeah. The most prevailing clinging thought is that I like to incorporate what this one taught, a little bit of that, a little, and I call it Buddhism by common agreement, and that's really what most Buddhism is today. In fact, I don't want to use his name, but you'll know who I'm referring to. One of the leaders, I won't even go that far. He's one of the world leaders of Buddhism, and he says that all Buddhism is the same, ultimately. In fact, all religions are the same, and he says that all over the world. And that simply contradicts everything that the Buddha taught. But I understand he's also a political figure. And it sounds reasonable. It sounds unifying, doesn't it? But it's simply,
Buddhism isn't religion.
it's not religion at all. And it's not even similar to other things. It's not even similar to other Buddhist religions. But, that's the problem. That's what a mind that is always grasping for identity finds great comfort in that. But there's also no awakening. I don't really have to do anything to address the core issue of my own ignorance when I can do other things that are commonly agreed upon as Buddhist practice. It's unfortunate. It used to get me much more internally upset than it does now. But without wanting things to be different, it does bring sadness to me because people are hurting, and this is an easy way out to me. It's not an easy practice, but it's a reliable way to end individual suffering. But so many people will never get it because they're so caught up in what they think it is that they can't let go of that and come to what is. I have very, very dear friends, people that I care personally about, that are so distracted by what it isn't, but think that that's what it is, that they can't get this simple teaching. And that is, and I'm sure the Buddha felt, in fact, he talks about that that is unfortunate, that's what occurs. And it's one of the reasons why he spent nearly as much time teaching what it isn't as he taught what it is, because it was a common during his time. So thank you. Glad you came on a Saturday. Mary, good to see you.
Good to be here. Good to see everyone. I enjoy the simplicity, knowing that it's not simple. I mean, it is simple, but it's not. And where the complexity comes, I think, is not, I don't have exposure, like what Helen was saying, I don't have exposure to other approaches to teaching Buddhism, but I have all my conditioned thinking of, my life, my upbringing, my experiences, etc. And so trying to take the simplicity of this and immerse your whole life, and recognizing what parts of your life that maybe you're compartmentalizing, and applying the practice to some parts of your life, but not others, and trying to recognize when you're doing that and when your conditioning creeps back in to, sort of lead you unsuccessfully in the wrong direction or back toward your powerful conditioning. I think it's a daily application through the rigor of, making sure you're sitting twice a day and things like that, so that you're constantly drawing yourself back to the practice. And for me, it's a series of, on, off, battling against my conditioning more than any other, I guess that conditioning is another way of thinking, just like approaching Buddhism through another way is a different way of thinking. Either way, it's not what the Buddha is teaching. And so it's just a constant, I don't want to use the word battle, but it's a constant effort to vanquish the conditioning, eliminate, behaviors that are contrary to being on the path, recognizing and acknowledging when you are on the path, right? And all of that. But that's, trying to minimize and mitigate how frequently that battle is felt, and trying to create more alignment of being on the path, I guess is my story of where I'm at.
Yeah, wow. Thank you. What a great description of integrating the Eightfold Path, because that's just what it is. The more our life is integrated with the Eightfold Path, the more peaceful and understanding we are. Thank you. David, good morning. Good to see you.
Just want to thank you for a year of teaching, ordinary teaching. There's no charms or tricks or promises, and we're very fortunate for that.
Thank you, and thank you all for being such a wonderful part. We really have something unique here, don't we? This sangha. Yeah, I don't know. Let me get to Russ, and I'll talk a little bit about next year, what's coming up. Russ, good to see you.
See you. I guess I just appreciate the simplicity of it. Honestly, to have a lot of rituals probably wouldn't be for me. Some people find comfort in that, but
Yeah.
I guess I'm not one of those people. Whether it's this or other parts of my life, so I appreciate it about this particular.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Kevin, good to see you.
See you, John. Thank you. It really makes me think, and I think we're all saying this in all different ways, is come and see for yourself. You know, and I think I've lived long enough. I think we've all lived long enough that we've heard about miracles, we've heard about meditation, we've heard about this, and I don't think any of us has ever witnessed it. I've never witnessed it, I studied a lot of science. I've never seen anywhere scientifically where it could occur, and I've never experienced it personally. I've never met anybody who ever seen anybody or known anybody. So it just is this fantasy. So it is such a relief to come to the Dhamma, to know that it's a simple teaching that is accessible, and it does happen, and we can experience it. And even in the 5 minutes, when we first start meditating for 5 minutes, and we're learning about the Dhamma, that's already enough to give us an inkling that this is the miracle that the Buddha talks about.
Yeah. Well put. Thank you. That 5 minutes. And it's in using the word miracle as extraordinary. It is just that, isn't it? That just this simple, pure practice, an Eightfold Path, can deliver what every human being really wants. We just don't know it because we're rooted in that fabricated view. What a great class. Thank you. I'm going to send out an announcement about teacher training probably tomorrow. Well, it'll explain itself, but the requirements are very easy to be met. I hope many of you, if not all of you, will partake in it. Whether you think you're going to teach or not really isn't the point. But hopefully we'll be training people that want to teach a little bit here too, and maybe after the cow gets me to keep it going. You know, well, it's true. We're gonna need that here. You know, it's we don't want this should not end when I go. I hope it doesn't. So I'll send that announcement out. There's one more sutta that I want to teach that relates to the 5 clinging aggregates, but also recognizing the aggregates within the present moment. It's not really anything new, but it's a different approach. And I like to present that before we start the Truth of Happiness course again. So there'll be one more class. There's a class Tuesday, by the way, on this same sutta. And then there'll be a Saturday and a Tuesday class on this next sutta. So in 2 Saturdays, we'll begin the Truth of Happiness course again here. I think that's it as far as the announcement. Frank, do you got anything to say? I don't think you have your mic on. I'm glad you could join us, my friend. We'll see you soon. Happy New Year, everyone. We'll finish with the Karaniya Metta Sutta, as we always do. So again, find your relaxed meditation posture. Gently close your eyes and gently close your mouth. And again, take a moment to become mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. These are the Buddha's words on metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways. peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class this morning. Peace. Thank you, Frank, for joining.